Hey, it's International Women's Day. I'm just going to post this discussing different issues involving women. So, just a few different stories, ramble around, and see where we get. I'm going to start off with something that was posted in a Facebook group I'm in. It was two articles about women in tech. The first one is on Alpha Game, which is called Leaning In. This is a short post, so I'm going to, of course, links are going to be in the bottom bar, but I'm going to just go over this short post. Leaning In. This explains why technology executives are so determined to get more women in tech. Research from the Center of Work-Life Policy shows mid-level professional women need powerful senior executives to help promote them to get to the next level of management. The problem is this: more often than not, superiors are males who are married. Enter sex. In the same CWLP study, 34% of executive women claim that they know a female colleague who has had an affair with a boss. Furthermore, 15% of women at the director level or above admitted to having affairs themselves. At worst, 37% claimed the action was rewarded. They said that women involved in affairs received a career boost as a result. So, based on the 3-to-1 rule, that means nearly half of female executives have had an affair with their boss. The other half, presumably, have had an affair with colleagues. Okay, the other post is Failing to See, Fueling Hatred. This is by Dana Boyd, the researcher of technology and society and the Microsoft Research and Data and Society from NYU. This was posted on backchannel.com. Links in the bottom bar again. A bit longer of a read, so I'm not going to read the entire thing, but just some excerpts. She gets to the messiness of privilege. I grew up with identity politics, striving to make sense of intersectional politics and confused about what it meant to face oppression as a woman and privilege as a white person. I now live in the world of tech wealth, while my family does not. I live with contradictions, and I work on issues that make these contradictions visible to me on a regular basis. She later goes on towards the end to say this: it is easy to say tough shit or boo-hoo-hoo, or to point out that some people have it much worse. And at some levels, this is true. But if we don't account for how people feel, we're not going to achieve a more just world. We're going to stoke the fires of a new culture war as society becomes increasingly polarized. The disconnect between statistical data and perception is astounding. I can't help but shake my head when I listen to folks talk about how life is better today than it has ever been in history. They point to increased lifespan, new types of medicine, decline in the infant mortality, and decline in poverty around the world. And they shake their heads in dismay about how people don't seem to get it. Don't seem to get that today is better than yesterday. But perception isn't about statistics. It's about a feeling of security, a confidence in one's ecosystem, a belief that through personal effort and God's will, each day will be better than the last. That's not where the vast majority of people are right now. To the contrary, they're feeling massively insecure, as though their world is very precarious. I mentioned this in a previous video about how lifestyle diseases such as heart attacks or mental issues exist far more in advanced or quote-unquote civilized countries versus the developing world. Now, this has many reasons, and I think you see some of that in what she was saying here. I also discussed in a video about how I personally do not feel that feels are the things to worry about here, because, as she said, statistically the world is better. So if you don't understand, or if you don't feel that you're actually in a better situation when you categorically are in a better situation in the way you can measure it, that's not necessarily an issue of the world being a problem. That's an issue of you personally not understanding what reality is. But I'm going to get back to my original idea. So, the person who posted this said, these posts have made me think differently about the issue of women in technology. I've always thought that feminist arguments about the workplace harassment and discrimination were wrong, and that the reason women aren't in technology is because they don't want to be there. But that's not the whole story. The poll in the Insider article said 34% of executive women say they know somebody who has used sex to get ahead, and 15% admitted to doing it themselves. Assuming the actual number is twice what is actually admitted, that's about a third of the women in tech who slept with their bosses. So there are two broad possibilities here. Either women are in fact facing more sexual quid pro quos and harassment than I thought, or the women themselves are initiating sex to make up for their incompetence in the workplace. So I have some issue with the wording of that incompetence. That's an assumption there, whether it only being two broad possibilities. But regardless, somebody posted in the group, I a young lady, or a lady, or a woman. I'll just call her M for now. She posted, I'm just going to kind of summarize what she said. She said it could be more of a complex issue between the two explanations and says it's hard for men to understand. She lists off some anecdotal evidence from the women that she's known who's worked in different fields who have and pointed out professors failing top female students for not sleeping with them, etc., or coworkers devaluing the quality of their work, and numerous examples. She's also said that she personally worked in tech and finance and faced many, so much unnecessary harassment. She's been accused of having that position only because she's female, which is a negative effect of affirmative action. She said she's had business partners ruin nights out by trying to ply her with alcohol, and she said this just happened recently. A man creepily told me he should bend me over his knee and spank me because my car battery dying made me slightly late to an appointment. So she says it doesn't happen that much in her current field, but she said she finishes off by saying, why should women put up with constant harassment for trying to do their job when men aren't expected to? And she says, read some of the horror stories coming out of Uber recently to see what happens when you try to report sexual harassment. So now I'm just going to read my response to what she wrote. It was sure sounds like some unfortunate incidents. Men and women are different, as are all individuals. I object to her generalization because if some person who happened to be black and male had issues at their workplace, they shouldn't come out and say, why should black men put up with constant racism for just trying to do their job when white women aren't expected to? And it would also be completely inappropriate to take the 15% who have used sex to advance their careers and state that why should all bosses have to be targeted by female workers? No, it's just 15%. It's just those women that you had experiences with, and it would just be that hypothetical black male who has issues. So, with this 15%, it's also very likely that the similar percentage of men have bribed or otherwise coerced someone for advancement in their jobs. I assumed that she was somewhat attractive, and I said, if you were possibly quite short and overweight, you may not get as many advances, be they in the workplace or otherwise. There are also other male-specific challenges men face that could fit the descriptions of harassment if the term was applied without a gender bias. For example, in that car battery situation, the person could have said to them, I'm going to punch you in your face for being late, or I could castrate you, or many other examples. So workplaces are challenging, and it may seem that entrepreneurship, being your own boss, would reduce the challenges that you face, but it actually brings its own level of challenges, including harassment from employees, customers, partners, and shareholders, etc., since you still will be dealing with a vast range of people, and in general, you don't have time off when you're an entrepreneur. Depending on the field that you're in, you're on call constantly. This may be semantics in what she said, but what percentage of interactions must be harassing for it to qualify as constant harassment? I don't even think slaves were expected to have constant harassment, so it's might just be a manner of speaking on her part. But I suggested that she report the times that she was harassed or stand against it when she judges it appropriate. And if no one defends her or she finds it similar to those Uber stories, then it's likely time to consider why she's even there. Because just as she's not expected, or any of you are not expected to be constantly harassed, no one should be expected to employ you. So this is the kind of situation where I was just getting at where, sure, if you're in a workplace that's horrible, you can stand up and say, I want to change this, but if it doesn't change, it gets to a point where it's also up to you as an adult to leave. Now, some other thoughts I had on this was that women are, of course, receiving more advances. This was more of a response to the main post. Of course, women are receiving more sexual advances. Men propose and women dispose. In the above studies, it said used sex. So was this a case of women initiating the sexual intercourse or the sexual relations? You have to figure with some of these situations, you're in a field that you might like. For example, if I really like animation, which I do, really like animation. If I'm in an animation studio and I find somebody else who's also really into animation and they also happen to be attractive physically and of the opposite gender, there's a good chance that I'll be attracted to that person. So how many of these situations is it where someone is honestly thinking that I really love this. This person really seems to love what I love. I'm spending a lot of time with this person, so let me just have a relationship with them. Versus some calculation of if I do X, I get a promotion in a more predatory sense, which the male equivalent would be kind of threatening someone for a promotion, saying, if I know my boss is sleeping with X employee and I promise to keep it silent, he might give me a promotion. Or if I help my boss hook up with somebody that I know they want to hook up with, that may help me, even if I'm not completely bribing him, just getting in good favor with him may raise the chances that I get a promotion. So, what's the male equivalent in this situation? I wonder how many non work hours related errands and activities are carried out across the genders. I'm not talking overtime, which men do a lot more of, but the equivalent of maybe going to your boss's house and picking up their dog to take to the vet or something. Someone answered my separate comment and agreed that sometimes it can be a mutual thing. And he offered the famous case of Mary Cunningham in the 80s as one such example where she and the CEO were later married after she left the company. So, of course, everyone involved denied that she was fast tracked to the vice president position for any illegitimate reasons, but I mean, they could be. So he asked what proportion of these interactions would be mutually voluntary and suggested that the individual men abusing their authority or individual women trying to trade up the ladder would be more common. Now, I found something kind of instructive from that simple example, the way he worded it. He said, individual men abusing their authority or individual women trying to trade up the ladder. How often do you hear this said in the opposite way, with the gender switched? The example would be this: individual men offering a chance to skip some rungs on the ladder, or individual women weaponizing their sexual marketplace value in order to get a promotion. So I think just in general, we have that way of looking at things when we look at men as a predatory people in this situation and women as going along with the situation, where I don't quite agree with that, especially in some of these challenging fields. You have these challenging fields where, in general, more men are driven to it because it's just, I think, in their more competitive nature. There's some things to do with testosterone and other things. As I said, sexually dimorphous species, we're different. What's good for the goose is not always good for the gander. Otherwise, we'd all be geese. Can go on and on with this, but let's get back to it. Men and women are different. So I do understand that in some of these fields, you might be getting maybe the top 50% of men in that situation, at least in competitiveness, in the kind of drive to achieve these high levels of things. Whereas if you have this field where it's just a few women, chances are those women there are the top in drive of the female population. So you're looking at the top 10 women going against man 50 to 1 out of 100. This is the kind of dichotomy I'm seeing here. So you'll have a situation where the women you will find there are probably going to be a lot more aggressive than your average woman. Now, though some of this wording with men abusing their authority and women trying to trade up is due to the general dichotomy where you see men as bosses and women as the employees, I doubt you'd see the same figures if the genders were switched and the female was the boss because of hypergamy, where women are attracted to men of higher status than they are. This is just a generally agreed thing. Women seek resource provision, and the more capable a man is for providing a resource, be it as a husband or getting a job, that's what they're attracted to. Okay, today is also hashtag A Day Without a Woman Day, which is a protest put together by the same people who did the Women's March on DC to protest the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. So this Day Without Women thing, it's more of a feminist organization. Planned Parenthood is involved with this. There's an unsavory character named Linda Sarsour, who you could just Google up and find some of her unsavoriness. But it's this idea where women should take a day off of work, and that's supposed to show the world how important they are. And there's a sad situation here. I mean, if you are important, then why would you want to take a day off from doing that? If you are important, people know you're important. You don't really need this validation from other people by taking a day off. My sister, she's a stay-at-home mom. Now, if you're a good stay-at-home mom, you can't take a day off. She doesn't take a day off, and I found that amazing. She's been great for my nephew. He's loving it. Imagine your mom decided, I'm going to take a day off now because, look, I'm not being paid. This kid is just sitting there crying. I'm going to take a day off. No, you don't do that. It's something important to do. You stick to that job. I know a lot of very amazing females, women, ladies who are out there who didn't participate in this day off because they like what they're doing, they find it challenging, they understand they're a part of it. This is the ebbs and flows of work. This is how life is, you know. The one article where she was talking about the field, she was talking about the perception. He's saying despite the facts, the perception, you know, the world is actually getting better, but since the perception isn't there, that's what matters. But no, it's not what matters. What matters is the facts, is the realities of it. And another thing is her general perception that of what people strive for, or this feel. You know, he says that people want to feel comfortable in their. Let me get actually comfortable in one's ecosystem. A confidence in one's ecosystem. It's your ecosystem. How is somebody from the outside going to grant you confidence in your ecosystem? You know, and that's not even a guarantee of life. That's not how life is. The odd thing is she talks about all this quote unquote privilege and how people might be spoiled, yet I'm thinking that mentality she has where her life could be about feeling of security or confidence in one's ecosystem comes from being spoiled, comes from having all those benefits in life, comes from the trappings of civilization of that have taken us away from Mother Nature's loving embrace. I say this in a more sarcastic note because Mother Nature is not that loving. You know, it's a challenge, it's a constant challenge. Survival of the fittest. That's what nature was about. That's what being out in the elements is about. It's not a hugging embrace of a loving and caring mother, but it's life. It's a challenge. It's ups and downs. You know, and these struggles make the ups that much better when you know how far you've come from. You know how bad it could be. So I'm going to end this rant here. It's been a bit of a longer one. Images of the Powerpuff Girls series that I'm working on. It's just another example of how this idea that we've had society, which is just looking down on women in general. No, it's not. You know, this Powerpuff Girls were amazing. I mean, I found them pretty awesome. I know a lot of guys that found it pretty awesome. A lot of girls that found it pretty awesome growing up. And this whole idea that we haven't had women, Mother Nature again also. Mother Nature, nature of all, that was women. As female. So this idea that females have been actually held down, I think most of the women in my life know that they don't really need a day. I kind of let it be known that how appreciated they are every day of the year, or at least as often as I can. So, yeah, I'm going to call it a rant here. Talk to you next time. Links in the low bar. Like and subscribe. Bye.